All right, let's move on. And Dr. Cole, now we present part two of our interview with Doug Plank, a former NFL player, of course, played football college-wise at Ohio State under Woody Hayes, 9 seasons with the Chicago Bears, known as one of the hardest hitters ever to play in the NFL, first Bears rookie to lead the team in tackles, and of course, Buddy Ryan, the famed Bears defense coordinator, naming the Bears 46 defense after Doug, who wore number 46. So, Doug, as we continue our conversation, is it true you've had both shoulders and both knees replaced? Take us through that.
It's interesting when you have as many contacts as I've had. Something is going to have to wear out, because even when I was on kickoffs and I wasn't playing, I would run down on kickoffs, and if the ball carrier, either ran my way or ran somewhere else, I usually had to run through blockers to get there. Those blockers were 20, 30, sometimes 40 pounds heavier than I was. And, this was blunt, forced trauma. There was no, eloquently, avoiding these big players. My job, in many cases, was to engage them. And if I couldn't get the ball carrier, my job was to destroy the blockers in front. So these collisions were massive. And so once the rules in the NFL started changing in terms of not using your helmet, you had to use your shoulders more often. So I began using my shoulders quite often. Unfortunately, this led to more separations on my shoulders. And after a period of time, the head was still involved in the contact, not as much as it was before, but the majority of the hit and the tackle was taken on by my shoulders. And, slowly after my career ended, I just started losing the control of my shoulders. They were so limited in terms of what I could do. I was forced to really replace both of them with artificial devices that I now have in both of my shoulders, my left and right shoulder. And, because of all the wear and tear, that 9 years of pro football brings upon you, I found out that I had basically worn out my knees. There was a lot of bone structure that had deteriorated. And, not surprisingly, when they opened up my knee to replace it, they said, there was no ACLs to even be found inside the knee.
Doug, would you say that most of your injuries actually happened because of just the event of tackling, or were there some other things that were just kind of random, caught off guard, what have you, where you just, you just get, caught when you're just not protecting yourself?
I had several arthroscopic surgeries done during my career also. I would usually average at least one a year. And just because you think about the incredible trauma of, falling on that hard AstroTurf, but then having people on top of you, it's simultaneously. And when you're running down on kickoffs, you're not getting blocked from the front all the time. You're having people that are off to the side that are trying to take out your knees. And as my knees kept getting hit more and more and more, and I kept getting my knees drained more and more and more, and more cortisone injected into my knees afterwards, almost on a 50% basis at the end of the games, you can't keep putting that kind of liquid and fluid inside your joint structure and have it survive. And the same thing with my shoulders. My shoulders would get sore. I would get them shot up.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's some excellent literature, and this is stuff that we've actually published. It looks at years playing sports. If you don't get injured, years playing sports don't necessarily cause injury to your joints, the repetitive loads. But really the thing that sets the time clock, I think, for the things you experience, which is what we would call post-traumatic arthritis of your shoulders and your knees, is just largely due to the fact that you had such profound injuries.
Again, visiting with former NFL player Doug Plank, Steve Kashul, Dr. Brian Cole at Sports Medicine Weekly. How many concussions do you think, Doug, you have suffered during your football career?
I think it's in the high 20s. I went through it one time. I tried to literally go through the schedule in high school. I told you about, I thought I had maybe 5 or 6 concussions over the 3 years that I played high school football. And then, the freshman year at Ohio State was really a big break for me, because the only thing I had that year was surgery on my knee. Getting hurt the first day at practice really prevented me from having injuries or concussions. But then, I was a kickoff person for my sophomore, junior, and the majority of my senior year until I got a chance to play just a couple games. I think I played 5 games in my 3-year career. And so I think I would say 30 is a pretty safe number. And what I qualify a concussion as I didn't know who I was, where I was, or what I was doing. Obviously, I only think I had 3 or 4 total carry-offs in my life. 2 in high school, and there was some in college at Ohio State on kickoffs. There's no more play that's more dangerous to a football player, I think, than a kickoff, because you have 11 men running at each other full speed with the intent of hitting the other person and trying to knock them out. And that's, when you do that 5-6 times a game, you're going to run into somebody that's bigger and maybe stronger than you are.
Again, visiting with former NFL player Doug Plank, Steve Kashul, Dr. Brian Coe here on Sports Medicine Weekly. Hey, tell us about when you were playing with the Bears, Doug, collision with Otis Wilson.
Well, this happened to be unfortunately, my last collision that I had with the Chicago Bears. And when other players hit each other on the defense or offense, we call this friendly fire. If you're a safety like myself, aggressive, and I come up every play trying to tackle somebody, which I don't see this technique ever. Gary Fensick and I basically finish something out. You don't see anymore in the NFL. You don't see safeties running to the line of scrimmage every single time trying to hit someone. And this was a game against the Detroit Lions in Detroit, and I came up. There was a short pass in front of me, and I came up full speed trying to hit the receiver as fast as I could. At the last second, he fell to the ground, and I had no idea Otis Wilson was coming the opposite way, full speed, and we suddenly just struck each other. And I think I knocked him out and knocked myself out, and I was on all fours, and Otis was laying on the ground looking up, and my helmet was right over top of his face, and I was dripping blood into his face. And I had just broken my nose in addition to, suffering a spinal injury. And that was my last glorious play being a Chicago Bear.
Wow, what a story. And I want you to leave with us with former Bears head coach Jack Pardee used to hand out igloo coolers for the best hit of the game. You had a few, right? Is that true?
You know what? It sounds funny. I mean, I know it's a different time. It was in the 70s. And but the hit of the game was sponsored by Igloo. And each week that we won, we had to win the game. There was a recognition at our team meeting the next morning, on Monday morning, and it was on special teams, offense, and defense. So everybody on the team was eligible to get this award. And if you had the big hit, which meant usually you hit somebody really hard, they went out of the game and never came back. And they would give you an Igloo cooler. And you would walk up in front of the class or the group, the team, and get your Igloo cooler, carry it back to the desk with you. And players were so excited about that. That was better than anything they could do all week. And there was just so much desire to have that done that I remember during the games after that, and I remember players running around on the field yelling, "I think I just won the Igloo cooler," because of some huge hit or tackle that they had made. And it's just, but it's all relative. It was not the prize. It was the recognition in front of all your teammates, just like anybody else would want to do in a business, and have recognition to say, wow, that person, he got the big hit of the game, and what a tremendous award.
You still have them, the coolers at home?
I sure do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I wrote the year on them, and they were, something I cherished. Now, I never told just a handful of people that story. And but it was, because I didn't want it to be regarded as a bounty or something like that. And I don't think you could consider an Igloo cooler a bounty.
No,
I don't think
clearly
many people would do that.
Hey, Doug, with the way you led with your head and the 25-30 concussions and 4 knockouts, are you worried about CTE at all?
There was just a recent event in Chicago, that 100-year anniversary of the Chicago Bears recognition, and I was very proud to be one of those players. But let me just say this. At that event, there was seriously some people that I knew had serious issues trying to talk, their balance. They were usually in wheelchairs. And, if there was one thing that I guess one thing I could bring back from that is the players that I saw said, Doug, if there was anybody with this issue, the CTE, I thought it was going to be you, because you were running into everybody, including me, in the back of my legs, our other players, opponents. I just think I was one of the fortunate ones. We're all comprised differently, and some of us can take one drink and be an alcoholic, and a whole bunch of other things. I just think that my body was set up to take punishment and hits, and it did. And I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to retain my sense of equilibrium and my desire to go on afterwards and, take classes and become a more educated and more capable person. So I'm very thankful. And so I would never try to discourage anybody from playing football because it brought me such great dividends.
Great stuff, Doug. Awesome. We can wish you continued good health. It's so great to hear you and how articulate you are and sharp, and the great memory and everything for such a brutal game you played. So thanks so much for joining us here on Sports Medicine Weekly.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed the opportunity to do it. And like I said, my days as Chicago Bear are nothing but bring a big smile on my face, and I wish the best for everybody else playing football.
That's Doug Plank, former NFL player. Of course, Buddy Ryan naming the Bears' 46th defense after Doug, who wore number 46 for our beloved Chicago Bears. Let's take a break here. Our thanks to Doug Plank. We're going to come back with our Ask the Doctor segment. Steve Kashul, Dr. Brian Cole, you're listening to Sports Medicine Weekly, only on
670 The Score.